Hey y'all, welcome to Circular Tone, and today it's something a little bit different. I am Mr. Speakers, Mr. Tube, Mr. Analog. You know, I can't stand the Sims, I can't stand Axe Effects or, Kempers and all things like that, right? Because every time I've played one, every time I've heard one live, I'm not feeling it. Until I come across the MOOER booth in NAMM, and I picked up this thing, the MOOER 001 preamp. The information on these are kind of vague, but apparently this one is modelled after Diezel. Other ones are modelled after a Marshall, I think it's JCM 900. Why they did 900 I'm not sure. There's other models like Fender and things like that. I used this through a 1x12 practice amp, very cheap setup, and I was writing. This thing was so playable in regular pedal mode in front of an amp mode that and it sounded so good, just for practice, relatively good. I know how to distinguish between the Top Gear stuff and a pedal, but for me this was hitting it out the park, and I couldn't wait to buy this when I got back from NAMM. So I bought it and I put it in front of my Fender amp, which is out there, which was technically better than the amp that I tried it in at NAMM, and it didn't sound very good. So did some research, and there's lots of different modes on there, so I tried out the different modes and it didn't sound that good on through a loud tube amp. Just using this as the amp, it didn't sound that good. Now you can use it in the loop of amps. I didn't have a loop on that amp, so I didn't try that aspect out. But what it does, it's a sim of an amp. So think of a Kemper. This is a limited Kemper where they have all of one amp in one pedal, and you can't update it, you can't load new impulses and things like that. This is, one and done type of thing, and I think it's a bloody good idea, because not everybody can afford £2 for a Kemper, but people can afford $100. So that's what they did. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this to the test. I'm going to put this in Kemper mode, which basically means that it has its own onboard cab simulation, and I'm going direct into the board. And I figured, since this is supposed to be like an amp, I'm going to mix it up. I'm also going to treat it like an amp. Practically all of my clips that I do, I put a boost in front of the amp. Even the good stuff, the good amps behind me, I tend to put a tube screamer in front of it or something, because it does change the tone. It actually changes it for the better in regards to tightness. So let's see what it does. I thought, let's go all out. Let's put this up against an alternative budget rig. So basically I have a budget heavy metal amp called the Bugera. It's based on a 5152 combo, I think it's based on the combo. So that's right behind me. For years it's just been propping up my other amps, but it does do a wicked 5150 impression, and that's why I have it, because sometimes you can get bogged down in the Marshall tone, because it's a very specific tone. So sometimes it gets boring, and sometimes you want to get the outrageous metal sound, and that does that for sure. So not only did I do that though, I thought, since I'm going to try and try different versions of it, I'm just going to have the Bugera on its own. I'm going to have the Bugera boosted with a cheap overdrive. I didn't want to go nuts with my $500 overdrives. So we have this preamp, which is also on its own and boosted with the the tube screamer style boost, and we also have EasyBix 2, which is a VST amp sim. So I used their bog standard heavy metal rhythm sound for that. But also I put this in front of that as well. So we have all these different versions of budget rigs. I even went as far as to not use an SM57. SM57 is like $100. I used a cheap mic which I spent $15 on used. It's a Cobalt 7, I think it is, Cobalt 7 microphone, and so it's not the best mic. So I didn't want to put, you know, all the best gear on a cheap rig. Yeah, I wanted to be realistic. You know, this is the things that, you know, a teenager could maybe afford and put in his rig. So, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the MOOER? Do you prefer the old school tube heavy metal rig, or do you prefer the direct VST Tune Track Easy Mix 2 setup? That was a mouthful. So let's get to it. Let me know in the comments if you like this type of stuff. Please subscribe. I still only have a couple of hundred subscribers, so if you find these things interesting, please share, subscribe, and you know, if your friends are bored with the usual YouTubers, then send them my way. Alright, let's do it. Circular tone. And we're back. That surprised me. That really surprised me. I thought in the hands when I was playing it, with using in amp sim mode, I call it Kemper mode. When I was using this in Kemper mode, it sounded good. It sounded $100. I wasn't feeling it. When I was playing the tube amp, I got that more of a connection, and I was enjoying the playing more. With this, there seemed to be a weird frequency of white noise that I didn't like. But drop those tracks into a mix, and it sounded good. It sounded better, in my opinion. It sounded better than the tube sound. I didn't like the easy mix 2 VST sound. It was kind of satisfying playing it because it was so much distortion, but I didn't like the tone in the mix. I didn't like the tone in the hands, and maybe I didn't do that as much justice. I just went with a bog standard patch. Maybe I should have tweaked it a little bit more, or at least did some post processing. But the whole point of this was hook it up and go. It wasn't a let's tweak to infinity and back. It was put a microphone in front of a cheap amp and a cheap pedal, or put this pedal in front of a regular interface in somebody's bedroom and go. And that is what we got. Why am I against plugins? There's a good reason. Or Sims. Why am I against Sims? In my experience, I've seen friends of mine go down the Kemper route and swear by it, and they may be in their old tone or their new tone, and it sounds almost the same. I'm not hearing better music from them. I'm not hearing better sounds. I'm not wanting to listen to their albums more because it's a Kemper. There is some disconnect, and I can't justify it. I can't quantify it. I'm not sure if it's a delay or something, but I can't listen to a modern album long term compared to a tube amp. I can tend to listen to, it's like Moorish, where I can't make it through a modern metal album these days that use the Kempers, and that it's a weird disconnect, and I can't really put my finger on it. I know from a fact that live through a power amp, a regular amp kills a Kemper. In all the situations I've been in where we've had a tube amp in the room and a Kemper being powered by a really good power amp, be it a Mesa power amp or even the old PV 120s, which are awesome, or a solid state one, or the one that came with the Kemper, there's something that happens with the top end. It's cab simulation on top of a regular cab. Something happens, and it's not true. Now, they have brought out a new box, Kemper have, which apparently sorts out that disconnect where you're not putting a cabinet simulation on top of an actual physical cabinet. And my friend, who is very experienced, he claims that it's done now, that is fixed. And I haven't actually listened to the live Kemper in that context yet with this new. I'm not sure if it looks like like a big DI box or something, so who knows. So yeah, it's not the Torpedo live thing, although that is pretty impressive. Now let's get real. Am I biased? Because I swear, right behind you, we have probably 16, maybe 14 speakers. Different ones in every single, so I've got a full stack, so I might have a 75, a vintage 30, a gold, a greenback, a blackback, a greenback, old CTS, a really old greenback, and then I might have like a 15-inch speaker here, and then some oddball Jupiter speaker, and it's full of all these weird old speakers. And I swear, the moment that it was finished and I was like, ta-da, look what I've got, look how clever I am, the Kemper came out. So people could get all this, with the press of a button. So I put all this blood, sweat and tears into it. So I might be biased as crap. and because, you know, it's sour grapes, where I've went through all this trouble to put together the ultimate guitar rig, where I can get modern metal tones, I can get Led Zeppelin tones, I can get really, even 50s speakers. You know, so I'm all proud of myself, and now everybody can get that by buying somebody's studio pack. But I have actually, when I do the ABs on the blind tests online, I do tend to pick the amps and not the Kempers, because there's some weird scritchy scratchy thing that goes on in the upper mids, which is kind of metallic. I don't think Kemper's quite there yet. You know, maybe with this new speaker box, maybe it's there now. But I still think I made the right decision. I might be in complete denial, but if you listen to my clips, in my opinion, they are less fatiguing than the average Axe-Fx or the average Kemper. You know, if you listen to a Kemper, if you listen to an Axe-Fx, the initial impact is, this is huge, this is lush, this is awesome. But it kind of grates, you know, when you keep on going and you're going through those, you know, digitized mids and you're stacking them up. And I honestly genuinely think that the vibe you get from real tubes, from real amps, from the real speakers, it's a longevity thing. So you can listen to an entire album. I mean, when was the last time that you picked up the latest Testament album and listened to the whole thing, and, you know, just because you wanted to immerse yourself in it? It's kind of tough going with modern metal these days. It's kind of tough going listening to an entire album, because there's so much bombastic, you know, it's when everything is huge, nothing is huge, and you're left flat. You know, it's I'd much rather listen to the old vibey, messed up tones than the pristine, you know, quantized digital perfection, you know. So who knows, man? All I know is that in the hands, I didn't like what this was doing. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't interesting to me when it came to, there was no surprises. Everything was kind of flat when I was playing it. But it sounded good. The impact, when I listened to the when I listened to the playback, this sounded better than the crappy tube amp, even though it sounds good. It's Bugera, but it sounds good, right? I like it anyway. It's kind of outrageously aggressive. So yeah, maybe I am being a get off my tone lawn. But then again, I'm spoiled. How can this sound as good as the hand-built Marshall that I spent a ridiculous amount of money on and obsessed over transformers and everything? You know, how can it sound, how can $100 sound like that? Because there's so many like textures and surprises, and you know, I'll send you, check out a link in the description, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this up against a clip that I did in my front room. So basically it was a few microphones around the room, and I was using the volume control to get lots of different tones out of a guitar. So I'm going to see if this truly does react like an amp. And I'm going to manipulate my volume control, and going to see if it really does act like a tube amp, or if it's just as flat and as, it's not toneless. It sounds bloody good, because, you know, I loved it when I first heard it, and I still love it, relatively for a pedal. So, breathe, ranting. Am I in denial? Is, you know, can you listen to the modern stuff, to the Kemper stuff, for 60 minutes and still feel like your ears are refreshed? Or is it taxing? Is there a little disconnect between the digital domain and the old school analog? Obviously, I'm biased, you know, but I'm not biased enough to tell you that this was my favorite out of the clips. I mean, yes, it was my worst amp that I own, but it was good for this style. And let's hear it for this too. Kaleen coming through for me again. I preferred the clips with this on. Maybe maybe when the two of maybe just this on its own was probably my favorite naked clip out of all of them, and this were probably as good in my opinion, just a little bit beefier. But I actually obviously I adjust gain, you know, because you can't use the same gain as this on its own and use this. You know, you've got to adjust this a little bit, and the same with, you can see the screenshot with the VST plugin that I did. You can see that the VST gain is lowered when I was using this in tandem with it. So you know, you push the volume on this, and then you make up. It's called makeup gain. So good stuff. Lots to talk about. So in my opinion, if you're broke and you're thinking, do you go VST or do you go one of these? It depends. Are you a thrash, regular straight through thrash band? You know, the old thrash albums that use the same tone for the entire album? Then maybe this is your best bet. If you need more options, then perhaps VST is the way to go. But these $100 each, probably priced right. At first I was like, that's kind of expensive, but when you consider that I just put this up against a tube setup, which is still only in the hundreds, it's not like $1,000 or anything, but you know, it could probably cost 4 or 5 times as much as this thing. So used, you might be able to get this Bugera amp for about $250. The pedal for another $20, you know, the microphone another $20, and you know, what a great travel rig this is though. You can plug this straight into the PA and get what you just heard. Gotta love that. Technology is fantastic. So the moral of the story, you got to embrace both, and you know, and make good music, and that's it. Sometimes if you gotta just plug in and go, what a great option to have. So if you like this type of thing, please hit that like, please hit subscribe, and any suggestions that you have. I know the first thing is going to be, will you put it in the loop? And the answer is no, because I've got one amp with a loop, and that's a 5150. So I don't really think that's the best thing to do. I mean, if enough of you ask, I'll do it. So that's it. Have a good one. I've been Owen. Circular Tone. Woo woo. Good stuff. MOOER.